Now, this particular house here may not look like anything on a very windy day here in London town, but it was, for a vast part of their very short life, the home to a true British comedy legend. I mean, quite literally, his work lives on so much around the world today. But he was a man who was very much troubled, very much insecure, but gave the world a lot of laughs. We're talking about the brilliant Tony Hancock. And as ever, I was lucky enough to meet and interview many people who closely worked with him. But today, here outside 20 Queensgate in Kensington, there is supposed to be a blue plaque. In fact, English Heritage very much put it on their website and said, there it is. I can't find any trace of it today. So whether somebody's taken it down or the current owners don't want to be associated with such a comedy legend remains to be seen. But literally, it was through these doors that so many famous people of the day walked to discuss work and, of course, be friends with the brilliant comedian, including the likes of the Carry On legend, Kenneth Williams, Sidney James, Hattie Jakes, and so many others. Now, I was lucky enough as ever to meet the brilliant comedy actress June Whitfield. Remember her from my generation, particularly from the sitcom Terry and June. A lovely, lovely lady, so down to earth and such good fun, and had really had an incredibly stellar career. I mean, she'd literally worked with them all, quite literally. And, there we were in this, I think it was a launch for a BBC TV series, chatting away about all the wonderful people that she'd worked with. And as she pointed out to me, Tony Hancock was probably one of the most difficult, simply because of his nerves. You see, Tony himself really knew about comedy timing. He had a great face for comedy, and he was one of the lucky people that transcended from radio to television as well. You see, when it started way back, Hancock's Half Hour on BBC Radio, I think it was the home service or the light service, well, it could empty pubs and churches. People literally went back home to listen to this. Remember, nobody could record it back in the day. As his fame grew, he moved into television with the very same tight-knit people around him, including these two gentlemen, the brilliant comedy writers Ray Galton and Alan Simpson. Now, Galton and Simpson had also written many other things, including, if you remember this, the brilliant Steptoe and Son. But it was their work with Tony Hancock that really shone and stood out. Now, the problem for Tony was that he was an infinitely jealous person. He didn't like the fact that, for instance, Kenneth Williams, and he told me this himself, was getting more laughs in the radio show. He was very good friends with Sid James, but then he too fell foul of that. June Whitfield backed up these stories as well. She said the problem was that, of course, a lot of people felt that Tony Hancock was writing all of this great material himself. Of course, it was all scripted for him. He wasn't very good at learning lines and had to be prompted on many various occasions. But as she pointed out, when the comedy magic struck, it really did strike. Of course, what happened inevitably was he fell out with Galton and Simpson. And what's interesting here is they really told me they had no idea suddenly why he decided not to work with them anymore. Things had taken off for them also. BBC television were coming at them for wanting more and more comedy. Lots of people were coming towards Galton and Simpson looking for comedy value, comedy greats, And I believe that Tony Hancock didn't like that. Obviously, at times he retreated back here to 20 Queensgate in Kensington, where sadly the demons took over. He did try and reinvent himself on many different occasions, including a moving to the big screen with The Rebel and taking on the likes of Variety. In fact, he got a long stint hosting for ATV their variety specials every Sunday night from Blackpool's brand new ABC Theatre. But sadly, once again for Tony, he was gripped by nerves and many times was not exactly what the public were expecting to see. And I mean that kindly. Another gentleman that I was lucky enough to meet and interview and become friends with over the years was a brilliant man called Alan Clegg. And he was the general manager of the Batley Variety Club, a place in my neck of the woods. And he had some dealings with Tony Hancock. And he also said that basically he was just full of stage fright, couldn't really remove himself from the character. And if it overgripped him and took him, he couldn't go on either. And if he went on, he normally offended the audience. Of course, with all great comedians, there's the laughter, the tears, and the dark side. And the dark side truly took over on a very final tour in Australia towards the end of the 1960s. Sadly, Tony decided to take his own life. There's always been some conjecture on that, or whether he simply took too many tablets, which is what Galton Simpson told me, or indeed it was a finality. What was interesting though, he did try and make a go of it over in Australia with a lone TV series that wasn't simply up to the standard that the fans had hoped or indeed demanded. Tony himself though truly lives on, and as I say, it's here, literally outside this door, in the very heart of Kensington, that so much of the magic was created. As Galton Simpson told me, it wasn't a glamorous location to work in, chairs full of stuffing hanging out, no carpet, just on delay, fan mail stuffed behind the lavatory. He was a bit of an untidy soul who lived erratically and simply lived in the highs and the lows of the moment. But as ever, what I often say here on the show is what they left behind was truly wonderful comedy gold. As ever, if you've not checked out Tony Hancock or you're new to his work, do have a route around YouTube. There's some wonderful sketches, some wonderful audio, and what you'll find is at least some laughs in these very dark, at times, days. Neil Sean in a very windy South Kensington, London.